Well, President Obama has vowed that his administration would be a transparent one. But is that really the case? Something he said at the National Governors Association suggests otherwise. He was overheard saying, quote, "What I want to do is clear out the press so we can take some questions." So the press can't be there to discuss the important questions. And this is coming from the same president that not too long ago said this.
The way to make government accountable is make it transparent so that the American people can know exactly what decisions are being made, how they're being made, and whether their interests are being well served.
President Obama has also been criticized for holding fewer press conferences than any other president since Ronald Reagan. But there are press conferences that do happen, and when they do, are they merely just staged events? RT producer Rachel Kurzius joins us now to discuss. Hi, Rachel. Nice to see you.
Hello.
So those few words at the Governors Association that the president uttered, do they say a lot about the state of transparency?
I would say they're pretty revealing. I mean, if anything, it sounds kind of like it's a big kids table and a little kids table, right? It's the policymakers are allowed to talk, but in order for them to be really candid with one another, they kind of need the press to go away, which makes you wonder, what is it that they're saying that they're so afraid if we hear it, there might be issues? So I would say it's quite revealing.
Yeah, and of course, we just played that clip from the president earlier on in his presidency, and you heard him say it himself. He said that he vowed to have a transparent administration. But is that the way that it's played out?
Well, the Obama administration and the White House really like to point to a couple of things that they say make them transparent. In particular, those We the People petitions that have come out. They say, essentially, you can say whatever you want to us and we have to respond. Not counting the fact that they actually upped the number of signatures needed for a response. But if you look at things that I think go a little bit further beneath the surface, for instance, Freedom of Information Act requests. So essentially those things called FOIAs as well, are ways that journalists can keep the government accountable by requesting information, and that information or needs to be provided within 20 days, or there needs to be a timeline of when that information will be provided and why it's not within the time. And Bloomberg News found that of the 20 cabinet-level positions, 19 of them did not respond within the 20-day period, and 14 of them never responded to these FOIA requests. So one of the main ways that we're able to keep government accountable isn't happening. I'd also like to take a listen to something that President Obama said at a press conference to a journalist who spoke out of turn, but wasn't asking a trolling question. He was asking a pretty legitimate question regarding policy. If we could take a listen.
Thank you very much.
On the spending side of the fiscal growth, because most of the conversation you said one half of the fiscal growth on the taxes side. On the spending, the 1.2 trillion trigger, is that something that you could see having a short-term postponement for? Because during the debate you said it's not going to happen.
That was a great question, but it would be a horrible precedent for me to answer your question just because you yelled it out. So thank you very much, guys.
All right, so he was kind of trying to put that reporter in his place, but what do you think?
I mean, it seems to me like if people have these sort of legitimate questions and the president is there to answer those questions, especially if he says, you know, this is a great question, it's something that I'd be interested in answering, the precedent there should be one, especially if you're promising a transparent administration, would be leaning towards the truth.
Right, right. I also want to get to, because yesterday you went to a press conference, and that is the Secretary of Homeland Security, Janet Napolitano. She held a press conference, kind of the state of Homeland Security. Was the press able to ask questions freely there?
Yeah, so this was at Brookings, which is an esteemed think tank among kind of establishment thinkers, and the way that it was presented, press was definitely there, but there were a lot of other policy researchers, people like that there, and I was really looking forward to asking a question. I found out that you had to write them on a note card, so I dutifully wrote it on a note card in my neatest handwriting, waiting to be called on, and I never was. All of it was pre-screened, so there were about 6 or 7 questions asked, and most of them were very softball questions. And, you know, you'd figure it would be tough to get Napolitano to come and just face a barrage of negativity, but I want you to listen to what she actually said instead of kind of answering these tough questions.
We have a student in the audience, Zach, who wants to know, I'll read his question exactly. What impact, as a student, what advice do you have for those who are interested in public service?
Do it.
All right, so as you said, the questions were screened, and I guess that's one of the questions that made the cut.
Yeah.
Was that-
Interesting standard, I would say. You know, I mean, it's just like, how can I grow up to be just like you, is essentially what that question says.
Right. So, I guess this gets back to the question I posed earlier. Are press conferences these days more looking like staged events?
Right. So as you mentioned, the Obama administration promised to be transparent. As we've seen, there are clearly a lot of shortcomings here. And I think that often the Obama administration gets compared to the George W. Bush presidency, which was seen as incredibly opaque, not transparent at all. This was due to Dick Cheney in large effect. He essentially made up new definitions of classification. He also said he was neither part of the executive branch nor the legislative branch, just to not deal with oversight. But in some ways, the Bush presidency was actually more transparent. What you said before, he had 10 more press conferences during his first term than Obama did. Also, during that first year of the Obama administration, the cabinet agencies employed nearly 500,000 exemptions to those FOIA requests. That was 50% more than Bush during his final year of presidency. So by some objective measures, it has gotten worse. But I think that unfortunately for Bush, there's one memorable moment that we really think of when we think about a Bush press conference.
Yeah, well, I guess certainly wasn't a highlight of his administration. We're going to have to leave it off there. Appreciate you weighing in, Rachel. That was our artsy producer, Rachel Kurzius.